All right. Hello. Welcome back to another video. My name is Marissa, and I am finishing my bachelor's in music therapy. I'm making these videos. I want to bring something new to the music therapy profession, and I kind of want to be a part in those conversations that we begin to have as we start to hopefully work towards bringing like hip hop culture and rap music and all these various elements of such into the profession. I again want to state that my videos will not get anyone to a level of complete authenticity. They are a mere stepping stone, as I've been saying. And I also like to always acknowledge that I'm still learning, and I'm sharing the information that I have found through some research and, just trying to figure it all out. And so I just want to acknowledge that and make sure that that's prefaced and let y'all know I'm learning here with you. And you can always leave a comment down below if you find something new or if something resonates with you or, doesn't resonate, whatever. So this video, I want to talk about old school versus new school hip hop. And kind of my goal with this is I kind of want to give kind of a basic background on what it is, like a really brief background on the key differences so that it can be utilized within music therapy. Whether that's like how we make the beats or how the raps kind of go, because that's kind of what I'm seeing with this. And my plan is to also give you like some top threes, like some of the big names in like the new school and the old school eras of hip hop, and then give you some songs to listen to by them as kind of a diving board, a diving board, to kind of just get you started. And then it's kind of like choose your own adventure. So I do have some notes. So old school began in the 70s, and it tended to have a simpler rap sort of technique. So the ways that people would rap were a little more simplistic, typically slower than the new school would be. In old school hip hop, they would often sample disco and funk tracks into their music. And what I was noting with that was that the songs that I was kind of looking at and listening to, lots of them tended to have that funky or disco-like sound to them. So I did see that correlation. In old school, they also had a freestyle. They had two ways that they'd freestyle. So the one that I think of that is most common and still common is freestyle that comes off the top of the head. It's like you're doing it in the moment. It's not written down. You're just kind of going and as it comes to you. And then I think of that as similar to a jazz solo. And then you have the freestyle where it's about the rhyme and it's written down, but it may or not have anything to do with the subject matter, and it might jump all over the place. So those were the two types of freestyles that I was finding. And the beats tend to be 2 to 3 beats, maybe 2 to 3 beats laid on top of each other that are pretty simple. And the words over top of them, as I said, are also simple and easier to understand. So some key artists I was finding were African Bambaataa, DJ Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, and the Sugar Hill Gang. All of these people tended to be kind of they are big names in old school hip hop. And one thing I think is really important to note that I think is really interesting that I think we could kind of utilize in music therapy as well is that African Bambaataa, he was a key figure in kind of helping with reducing gang violence in New York. And one of the ways he did that was he let the inner city youths come together and battle through dance rather than getting violent. The fact that he could bring, these people together and they could have an outlet for the anger they felt, whatever it may be. I think that's really interesting and something that we could utilize music therapy in a lot of different ways. I mean, we could do the same thing, You have two clients, let's say, who are really just bumping heads, whatever. I mean, you can have them get that out through a dance battle. You could have them get that out through DJing. DJ Kool Herc, I wrote a little note on him. He's one of the pioneers in live mixing two different songs together. And this is kind of where the break beat was born. And the break beat is that part where the break happens. I don't know how else to explain that. It's where the breakdancing section would happen. So you have people rapping and then the breakbeat hits, and then people could come in and like dance. And like later on, him and African Bambaataa actually organized block parties where DJs would come together and create music using like breakbeats and like scratching, which is like a technique used on like turntables that disc jockeys, like DJs, that's what DJ disc jockeys would use. Mr. Flash was closely related to DJ Kool Herc. It's really interesting because when looking at like DJs and like talking about that, Grandmaster Flash is usually who people talk about first, but him and DJ Kool Herc were like really close up there together actually, and they used similar mixing and scratching techniques and methods, and he's considered one of the godfathers of hip hop, which I think is really important to note. And I included Sugar Hill Gang just because like they're like a classic. It's just a classic. And that's kind of how I picked my songs. My first song I picked is Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang. I'm sure if you don't know it, you'll listen to it and you'll have heard it somewhere. There's no way. There's no way. And if you haven't, that's okay too. I highly recommend. It's simply a classic. That's kind of like, I feel, you know, how we talk about these standards in music, you know, like when you study music, you tend to have to like know these classical artists, you know, Mozart, Beethoven, Haydn, whatever. And I feel like this song and like Sugar Hill Gang is one of those for old school hip hop. My other song is Planet Rock by African Bambaataa. And then my third song, which I think is really important and was really kind of a game changer in hip hop, because before hip hop, lyrics were mostly about like having fun and partying and bragging even. And this last song, The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, this was one of the first songs that like shamelessly commented on like life in society, you know, as it was happening to these various people in this social class and such. And it really had a huge influence on the hip-hop artists who came later. And, you know, I always talk about how, like, rap music, hip-hop, it's a way for marginalized and oppressed communities, at least in this context, to express themselves in these various ways, as we talked about with, like, various definitions and such in my hip-hop video. Some other artists, I'll list them in the description box for old school, and you can like use those as more of a diving board as well. So going to new school began like in the early 80s, so that's like almost like 10 years, right? It's like 1983 or 4-ish. And this is where we kind of start to see the use of the drum machine starting, like we're getting into that kind of digital sort of era is starting to come about. And it was often, there were like elements of rock mixed in. And it's notable for the rapping side was very like taunting and boastful. And there was quite a bit of socio-political commentary in there. And it was delivered in like this aggressive and assertive style, which I think is really interesting and a pretty key difference. And the songs tended to be shorter, as, you know, they wanted to see, like, how do we get this to the mainstream? And they were finding that, like, radio stations and such would, like, play the songs if they were shorter, and then it was easier to gain radio play. And by, like, 86, these various hip-hop releases began to establish the hip-hop album as, like, a fixture in the mainstream. I'm going to name drop a couple people, but, like, the Beastie Boys, they were a white trio, but I digress. They're who like really popularized digital sampling, which is like where you compose music with sounds like extracted from other recordings, but you do it like electronically. I don't know how to explain that without getting too into it, and we're already like pretty long video. So look into that. Look into like how digital works, digital sampling versus old school sampling techniques with like turntables and such. Public Enemy, they really invested rap with radical black political ideology, which I think is really important. And they built on that idea of like a social consciousness that Grandmaster Flash kind of started to, I guess, pave the way for, especially in that song, The Message, that I previously mentioned. And KRS-One and Chuck D really pushed message rap, as they call it, towards black activism. And that's what I'm talking about with there are messages in rap music, in hip hop culture and rap music that have messages and meanings behind them, which I talked about in my hip hop versus hip hop video, where we see that sometimes gets lost because people are all about that profit these days. So my key artists, Run DMC. I think of Run DMC when I think of New School, because this trio, this trio really did that. That's kind of how I think of them, because like I can see a lot of kind of what they did, at least as far as like fashion goes, being played out like now, if that makes sense. They really defined like a new style of like hip dress, like the fashion element in hip hop culture. And they're like where like they were the guys who got a partnership with Adidas, and they had like the Adidas tracksuits with the Adidas superstars, you know. And they were like trendsetters for that, because like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. White people saw that and they were like, hell yeah, I want to do that too. And then they did it, and then like the brand was like, oh damn, like this is money right here. This is what we got to be doing, you know, and you know, make it digestible for these folks so they invest and buy our product, right? And with that, they also really brought rap to a mainstream audience, which really, I mean, once you get it to the mainstream, it does become a game of profit, but I digress. So that's where we really see like that fashion like start to come about. I mean, now we're at like Air Jordans, and you have like Nike versus Adidas and all this big whatever. And I just think it's so interesting that kind of stems from this. I mean, probably not completely, but like one of the things leading to that is this. And I think that's so interesting because I am a sneakerhead. I loved to find this information. Another key artist, KRS-One, which I previously mentioned. His name is short for Knowledge Reigns Supreme Over Nearly Everyone. And he is considered a pioneer in the styling and promotion of hip-hop, as not only a music, like, kind of scene, but the culture of hip-hop, which is kind of what all these videos are kind of talking about. Is, like, I want us to understand, like, how all these things play into hip-hop culture, and, like, that hip-hop culture, it's like all around us, and it comes from like these people and these lives that they've lived, and I think that's really important. Another key artist I've added is LL Cool J. He's a really big contributor to the genre, because he showed and proved that hip hop was something that artists could be successful in, he made it viable to like record labels, because before that record label was like, ooh, hip hop, what? You know, that whole thing that happens. And there's more to that, but he really showed out and proved that it was something that artists could be successful in. And I think that's really important to know. And so some songs I have to listen to. KRS-One, My Philosophy. This one I like because in the song, he talks about the commercialization of hip hop and then the rise of fake rappers, which I think is really important. And by fake rappers, it's like this idea that you're rapping because you know that if you're in this music scene and you're making this type of music, you can make money. And I think we see that a lot today. I mean, a great example of that is like Miley Cyrus, who they come into this scene of hip hop and rap, and they make songs, whatever. They get their profit, but they have the opportunity to leave once they're done doing that genre, right? And they're like, okay, you know, it was cute for my minute and now I'm done. Whereas this is a lifestyle for others, you know, typically Black people. So I think that's a really important song. Also, Mama Said Knock You Out by LL Cool J, just because it's the most noted of his career. And then Run DMC's Sucker MCs, because this song really utilized the 808 like drum and hand clap pattern, which is like a signifier of this like era of hip hop, and we still see 808s. Google that. I'm not going to get into all that. Utilized now, so I think that those are really important. But yeah, so that's kind of all the information I have for old school versus new school. So to sum it up, the main difference between old school hip hop and new school, it's in the beats and the way that the message is delivered. Because old school hip hop, we'll come back again. I'm going to remind us, it's like 2 to 3 beats laid on top of each other with simple and easy to understand like lyrics. Whereas new school, it has 6 to 8 beats for track and like ad libs and like a big range of like edited sounds, reverb, echo, whatever. And the words tend to be more complex and they're delivered like almost twice as fast than they are in old school. So with new school, it's like more tracks, more sounds, more words, quicker. Old school is like that. It's like the basis for the rest. Yeah. So I'm going to leave some links in the description box, and I'll leave some names of artists to look at and like the songs that I think you should listen to. I'll try and link those in the description box as like jumping points. And I hope that this video was helpful and that you learned a little something. That's kind of my goal. It's just to kind of share some things that I'm learning. And I encourage you to like the video if you want to. I don't know. I'm not like a YouTuber like that, but you know, if you want to, give me some feedback because, you know, I'm still learning and growing and I'm going to continue to do so. I'm not just going to stop here because like I said, these are stepping stones. They're stepping stones for me just like they are for anyone else. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching my video and I'll see you in the next one.